Chapter 22, Part 3. Uncle Willie asked, "A baby angel?" "Yes, sir," and it was laughing right in my face. Then I heard this long moan. Ugh! Well, as you say, Sister Henderson, we've been together over 40 years. I know Florida's voice. I wasn't scared right then. I called, "Florida?" Then that angel laughed harder and the moan got louder. I set my bowl down and got closer to Bailey. Mrs. Taylor had been a very pleasant woman, smiling all the time and patient. The only thing that jarred and bothered me when she came in the store was her voice. Like near-deaf people, she screamed, half not hearing what she was saying and partly hoping her listeners would reply in kind. That was when she was living. The thought of that voice coming out of the grave and all the way down the hill from the cemetery and hanging over my head was enough to straighten my hair. Yes, sir. He was looking at the stove and the red glow fell on his face. It seemed as if he had a fire going inside his head. First I called, "Florida? Florida? What do you want?" And that devilish angel kept on laughing to beat the band. Mr. Taylor tried to laugh and only succeeded in looking frightened. "I want some." That's when she said, "I want some." He made his voice sound like the wind. If the wind had bronchial pneumonia, he wheezed, "I want some children." Bailey and I met halfway on the drafty floor. Mama said, "Now, Brother Taylor, could be you was dreamin', you know. They say whatever you goes to bed with on your mind." "No, ma'am, Sister Henderson. I was as wide awake as I am right now." "Did she let you see her?" Uncle Willie had a dreamy look on her face. "No, Willie. All I seed was that fat little white baby angel. But wasn't no mistaking that voice. I want some children." The cold wind had frozen my feet and my spine, and Mr. Taylor's impersonation had chilled my blood. Mama said, "Sister, go bring the long fork to take the potatoes out." "Ma'am?" Surely she didn't mean the long fork that hung on the wall behind the kitchen stove, a scary million miles away. I said, "Go get the fork. The potatoes are burning." I unwound my legs from the gripping fear and almost tripped into the stove. "Tell her to be quiet." Mama said, "That child would stumble over the pattern in a rug. Go on, Brother Taylor." Did she say any more? I didn't want to hear it if she did, but I was not eager to leave the lighted room where my family sat around friendly fire. "Well," she said, "Ah," a few more times, and then that angel started to walk off the ceiling. I tell you, I was pert near scared stiff. I had reached the no man's ocean of darkness. No great decision was called for. I knew it would be torturous to go through the thick blackness of Uncle Willie's bedroom. But it would be easier than staying around to hear the ghoulish story. Also, I couldn't afford to aggravate Mama. When she was displeased, she made me sleep on the edge of the bed, and that night I knew I needed to be close to her. 1 foot into the darkness, and the sense of detachment from reality nearly made me panic. The idea came to me that I might never get out into the light again. Quickly, I found the door leading back to the familiar, but as I opened it, the awful story reached out and tried to grab my ears. I closed the door. Naturally, I believed in haunts and ghosts and things. Having been raised by a super religious Southern Negro grandmother, it would have been abnormal had I not been superstitious. The trip to the kitchen and back could not have taken more than 2 minutes. Yet in that time, I tramped through swampy cemeteries, climbed over dusty gravestones, and eluded litters of night black cats. Back in the family circle, I remarked to myself how like a cyclopean eye was the belly of the red-hot stove. It reminded me of the time when my daddy died. You know we're very close. Mr. Taylor had hypnotized himself into the eerie world of horrors. I broke into his reminiscences. Mama, here's the fork. Bailey had lain down on his side behind the stove and his eyes were shining. He was more fascinated with Mr. Taylor's morbid interest in his story than with the tale itself. Mama put her hand on my arm and said, "You shakin', sister? What's the matter?" My skin still rippled from the experience of fear. Uncle Willie laughed and said maybe she was scared to go into the kitchen. His high little laugh didn't fool me. Everyone was uneasy at being beckoned into the unknown. "No, sir. I ain't never seen nothing so clear as that little angel baby." His jaws were scissoring mechanically on the already mushy sweet potatoes. "Just laughing like a house on fire. What you reckon it means, Sister Henderson?" Mama had reared back in her rocking chair, a half smile on her face. "If you sure you wasn't dreaming, Brother Taylor." I was as wide awake as I am now. He was becoming angry again. "As I am right now." "Well, then maybe it means I ought to know when I'm asleep and when I'm awake." "Maybe it means Sister Florida wants you to work with the children in the church. One thing I always used to tell Florida, people won't let you get your words in edgewise." "Could be she's trying to tell you I ain't crazy, you know. My mind's just as good as it was. To take a Sunday school class 30 years ago. If I say I was awake when I saw what that fat little angel, then people ought to. Sunday school needs more teachers. Lord knows that's so. Believe me when I say so." Their remarks and responses were like a ping-pong game, with each volley clearing the net and flying back to the opposition. The sense of what they were saying became lost, and only the exercise remained. The exchange was conducted with the certainty of a measured hoedown, and had the jerkiness of Monday's wash, snapping in the wind, now cracking east, then west, with only the intent to whip the dampness out of the cloth. Within a few minutes, the intoxication of doom had fled, as if it had never been, and Mama was encouraging Mr. Taylor to take in one of the Jenkins boys to help him with his farm. Uncle Willie was nodding at the fire, and Bailey had escaped back to the calm adventures of Huckleberry Finn. The change in the room was remarkable. Shadows which had lengthened and darkened over the bed in the corner had disappeared, or revealed themselves as dark images of familiar chairs and such. The light, which dashed on the ceiling, steadied, and imitated rabbits rather than lions, and donkeys instead of ghouls. I laid a pallet for Mr. Taylor in Uncle Willie's room, and crawled under Mama, who I knew for the first time was so good and righteous she could command the fretful spirits, as Jesus had commanded the sea, "Peace, be still."